Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Body Wise Podcast. I am Laura. I'll be your host today. And I'm very excited because we will be getting to know Dr. Gina Sirchio-Lotus, a powerful women's health advocate who specializes in functional medicine for over 12 years. She's the producer of the Women's Health series, as well as being a passionate health educator who's helping people recognize their ability to heal from the inside out and make powerful, informed decisions. So let's welcome her today. Thank you so much for being here, Gina. So I was wanting to offer a little casual introduction from you to our listeners, if you'd like to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. This is a really fun place to come and talk about women's health and hormones and just so much good information. So I've been in practice for almost 17 years. I do have an Instagram site, Women's Health Series, but in my personal office, I do functional medicine. I do see men and women and children. And what I really love to do is educate. So whether it's my patient in-house, I definitely am known as a talker, but I want them to leave with information. I want people to know their body better, to take care of it better. And I just always feel that not just knowledge is power, but knowledge reduces fear. And there's a lot medically that we get afraid of because we don't know what's happening. The more I can teach, the better it is. So I do cover a lot of women's health topics. I cover sports performance. I see a lot of autoimmune disease, definitely cover a lot of nutrition, lifestyle, and exercise, but also a lot of testing and really trying to narrow down a diagnosis and help people out.
That is so wonderful to hear, because the education piece is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And as we were talking before, especially in medicine, it is a huge missing piece. You know, we get told over and over again, well, doctors are not really educators. That's not what they're there to do. But then we have this huge, just, I don't know, we have patients, uneducated patients, uninformed patients, people who are suffering but don't understand their bodies, and they don't seem to be getting better. And I think, well, I'd love to know for you, how did you make that connection of like, okay, how empowering and how much it serves your patients to actually know and learn for their own just knowledge and understanding of their bodies? How does that support their healing and the work that you're offering them?
I think it really honestly starts with me. I like to know the answer or my mind starts running, right? And so, I mean, thankfully, when I was younger, Google didn't even exist. And so I definitely would have been someone who would have Googled myself into a panic, not knowing any other resource or what is this weird thing. And obviously I'm dying from 10 diseases because I have a headache or whatever it is. So I think a lot of it is, I like information. And if I go in for something and the doctor's like, oh, you know what, this happens a lot, especially in young women, and here's why, then I would go home so soothed, like, oh, I thought that was weird, but it's not. And actually it's really common. And not only am I going to sleep well tonight, I'm going to actually not worry about this thing at all, or I'm going to solve it and then not worry about it. So coming from that spot, I always feel like when people come in and sometimes they're embarrassed because they've been Googling, and it's possible that they've been chastised before, or they just are worried about being chastised. You know, there's a lot of people that love those mugs that are, you know, whatever it is, like, I'm a real doctor, not Dr. Google, or whatever it is. And I know it's funny, but, you know, guess what? All the doctors Google themselves also. So it's one of those, like, I don't like when people feel ashamed of asking a question or feel bad. And so if they can come in and say, you know, oh my gosh, I've been Googling this and I've been all over WebMD and I'm terrified. If I can re-explain what's going on, even if they do have something of issue, it's like, hey, listen, this is going to require some treatment and you're going to need a referral to a specialist. Like, even if they do have a more complicated path forward, just laying it out, I think it removes so much worry and so much what ifs. And, you know, we all go down those little rabbit holes of fear if we're not helped otherwise. So trying to give, you know, here's why your body is doing this, and here's when it probably started, and it either was or wasn't your fault, and here's what we notice, and here's how we test it, and all of this. I feel like you give people ownership over what they have going on. You know, some people take it and run with it and really need very little care going forward because they're like, oh, that's what's going on. Yeah, I can change that. Other people, you know, it's the whole, like, you know, you can lead the horse to water and they do nothing. And that happens to you, but it's okay because you've given them their piece and it's up to them to decide what do they want to do with it. Are they ready to do something? Are they not? You've done the best you can.
Absolutely. I think that what you say about people, essentially it's up to them if they want to heal, if they want to move forward, if they want to take action on those things. And one of the things that we were talking about is lifestyle changes. And I really want to dive into that because as someone who, you know, obviously sharing information is so important. And even in the wellness world right now, there is so much online information, you know, not just like Dr. Google, but there's just sites that have nothing to do with medicine, but it's like healthy lifestyle, healthy habits, healthy living. And I think even in my experience as well, I think I see a lot of women who are doing things that they feel should be healthy and helpful, but they're still feeling like their hormones are off or they're not feeling as well as they could be. And I'm starting to question, you know, how much do these lifestyle tweaks or hacks serve us when they're still happening within the paradigm of people trying to, you know, push themselves to be what, you know, society expects them to be and to look that certain way and to feel great all the time and to be on all the time. And, you know, we're just either overstimulated or not resting enough. And, you know, where is that conversation to be had? That's, let's take a step back. And what are you working towards? Are you working towards, you know, going at 100 miles a minute while drinking your green juice? Or is slowing down even an option on the table? Like, you know, I'd love to unpack a little bit about what you feel when you talk about lifestyle, things that in your experience are kind of the core essentials that make a really big difference, or even how to approach that in our culture.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I will say what I say now to patients, like it just evolves probably every 5 years, you know, in my practice. And I mean, I would attend my own visit 10 years ago and just be like, what are you even saying? You know? So I think something that I've really come into trying to learn more about lately is wellness. Wellness is really a terrible word. You know, wellness, I always say wellness is trash because it is not a definition of your lab results. It does not tell us anything about how your health actually is. It doesn't define how you're actually feeling. Nothing. Wellness is like a sales pitch, right? Wellness is like cute outfits and adorable hair and the best green juice and whatever. Like that's wellness, which can all be purchased if you have the right money and you look the right way, right? But you got to have the look also. So wellness as a whole, and unfortunately, excuse me, even the world of like nutrition and things like that, which nutrition is a science, right? I mean, it's measured, it's tested, but nutrition online and in the social media world is very cute, right? And the wellness world, nutritional world, all that put together, we really have big major issues with elitism, racism, classism, affordability. And I think some of those, that's why like I would look back at some of the things I told patients, you know, 10, 12 years ago and say like, why would I even say that? That person could not follow through. Like I gave them one option because it was what I thought was the best option, but I gave them no way to actually achieve that. Like it was a dead end. It was a dead end piece of advice. And so I think trying to look at that now and say, okay, the wellness stuff that's on social media by and large is terrible because it's selling an image. You know, there's a lot, I mean, I could probably name 10 companies offhand right now where, you know, the fitness model opens the greens or the supplements, whatever it is. And some of the products are actually decent. There's not, some of them are totally fine products to use. But the person is adorable and they have the tiniest crop top and their abs are highlighted. And all they do once a day is mix this one thing, you know, and like, what are you selling? You are not actually telling someone, hey, I can help you with your thyroid hormones. Like this is actually going to reduce this. I can actually help you with your dry skin. This is actually going to help that. Excuse me. It's so annoying. So sorry. You know, and it's like the things that people are actually looking for, even if they've looked for something different online, the message is kind of always the same. I wish you were a little wealthier. I wish you were a little whiter. And I wish you were a little bit thinner. And if you could be those things, well, then you too could be welcomed into the world of wellness. And if you're not, we don't really have a spot for you because that's not wellness. And it's almost said outright, right? It almost is.
Yes.
So trying to offer people lifestyle improvements and lifestyle medicine is a lot more of like, forget the images. Let's look at you. You know, maybe it's big picture and we're just saying, listen, are you even eating vegetables? Okay. Do you drink water? Do you sleep? And if you can't say yes to those things right there, it's like hard stop right there. Those are huge, huge puzzle pieces. And they can be cheap a lot of the times. They can be cheap and they can be attainable for many. Still not all, but for many. And so I do love to have these really broad stroke, like, listen, I know it's boring, but go home and drink your water. You know, and if people are like, why do I like water? Which I do get a lot. I don't really like water. What else can I drink that's not water? Like, you could drink water or water. I'm like, I'm sorry to say, you're made of water. You're going to have to drink some. You know, sure, you could squeeze a lemon in it. We get into all that. But it's like, at the end of the day, like, you're going to have to cross that bridge on your own, because that's just how humans live. We drink water. Just, I don't want to know how far back we want to go. That's really as basic as we can be. You know, and helping people with sleep and stuff like that. And then if those things aren't working, or people are really struggling with that, and they say, you know, I've tried sleep habits, I've tried melatonins, I've tried the things that are within my capability. I'm trying to eat vegetables. Some people have such gut disruption that every time they eat vegetables, they're more bloated, and they're like, I don't know how to get healthy because the things that should make me healthy make me feel terrible. I'm obviously a crazy person. What next? So those people, it's like, okay, we tried the big fix. You're going to need some testing, some stool testing, maybe hormone testing. There's a lot that can be offered to these people. It does raise the price, which is why I say it's a very tricky zone. But at least it's a starting block, right? Personalized medicine is sort of the way of the future, and it's awesome and it's wonderful, but it is pricey. Hands down, it's pricey. And even doctors that charge a lot for it, the labs are expensive. You know, so even if doctors are trying to say, okay, well, how can I make a business and survive, but also care for my patients? At the end, it will still be costly for the patient, because insurances have not come around to valuing those same tests. So it is hard, right? And I feel like when you see wellness online, you know, it's there's no complexity, there's no layers, it's just, you know, I mean, even in magazines, how many times have you seen that ad that's like, click here or turn this page for the one food that will rid you of belly fat, right? And it's like, well, if it was really that simple, we would all just eat the thing and move on. Like, why is our nation struggling? Why aren't we just eating a magic thing, right? Of course, because there is no magic thing.
Yes.
You know, and one person who thrives on certain vegetables totally bother another person, and they have acne and fatigue. So there has to be this balance. And that's really where we try to get into, is balancing, how can I personalize it as much for you, so you know what helps you, you know, wellness for you, you know what thrives for you. And also, what can I hand out that just kind of helps most of the people most of the time, right? Which is how I try to use my Instagram. How can I talk to people I don't even know and say, this will most likely help you, start here. If it doesn't, you got to go in somewhere, but here's a cheap and easy, hit the ground running. Right?
Yes, I love that. I really like your Instagram. I was looking through it, and it has very like practical, useful information, education. It's such a challenge, I feel like, for me, because the attention span and the short things, but I noticed that you're like, I'm going to convey this message. It's in this amount of time, but here's the like, boom, 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 like the one on your opinion on the coffee enema. I loved it. That was so brilliant. Like, this is what people say that it does for you. And then what's like true or not true, kind of like myth busting. And it was so direct and made sense. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's just very good to know. You know, it's one of those things that I think, like you said, people are looking for that magic bullet. They're looking for answers outside of themselves. And that's the way we've been functioning for such a long time. And when it comes to our bodies, I think we stop paying attention. And especially, I mean, as a woman, you know, the first thing that you hear or are recommended is, once you're in the reproductive years, birth control for everything. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of women come to me and complain about, that they go to their doctor and they just get thrown birth control into their face. And ultimately, I think that education is, you know, even hearing you speak, if we even understood like the gut health, the gut connection to your hormones. I have a lot of people who are talking about their cycle, talking about balancing their hormones with no notion that their gut health impacts their hormone health in any way. You know, we don't even have as adults. And I say to myself, I remember I graduated from a university and I discovered this kind of like world opened up to me when I was looking for an alternative to hormonal birth control. And I said, I don't want this crap. I feel horrible on it. There has to be something else. And I didn't like the options, like the mainstream options. And I found myself in the natural family planning world. And I found the secular, like the symptothermal method and that whole fertility awareness world. And just honestly, the background education for you to understand those methods was mind blowing. Like,
yes, totally.
Cervical mucus? What? There's this
people
thing.
Talk about this. Like, it's not a secret. People talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has a purpose. Like even my own bodily secretions were totally misunderstood as an adult. And I'm saying, like, a fully educated woman in the United States, you would think that some of these basics were something that all of us would know or should know.
And I would say, I mean, I have no stats, but if I had to guess based on who I've met in both just my life as friends and family and patients, I would say less than 1% of women understand how their body works, truly. And it's a total, you know, on one hand, it's a disservice. Sometimes I feel like it's purposeful. You know, I can put my, you know, feminist hat on and be like, they're trying to misinform us, which I don't really think is the case as much as like, this is the way it's always been and no one has seen it important to do it otherwise. And so it just doesn't change. I think there's a little bit more of that in the background, more than malicious intent, depending on how I feel on the day. But, you know, it is like, it's so, you know, we laugh about like, you know, whether we had sex education in school and what that actually entailed, you know, which for a lot of us was like, okay, well, there's a woman and there's a man, and then there's this one action. And so, okay, social studies begins in 20 minutes. Everyone can get a drink of water and we'll see you across the hall, you know, and everyone's like, what? Yeah. But you can't ask questions because of course it's mortifying, and teachers gliding over that stuff and not stopping on it reinforce this is shameful and mortifying. And like, plus your body is disgusting. And so, you know, oh my God. And if I think about it, like even the way teachers interacted with us, I know in 7th grade, I had a male teacher who was not my favorite on any subject matter, but right from the beginning, he was like, you know, if you have to go to the restroom, you know, you sign out over here. Okay, fine. And he's like, girls, I don't even want to hear it. Just go, just go. Now, on one hand, it was a little bit of relief. Oh, thank God we don't have to ask him if we have to go. We can just go. So I will say part of it was like, oh, thank God I don't have to even, I can just sign out and exit if I need to change a tampon or God forbid anything else. So that part was relieving. But the other part that he really made known was like, ew, don't even talk to me. Go over there. Like all of you in here are probably gross. If you're talking to me, it's probably on something gross. You are all gross, right? Which like, okay, well, we're not asking you questions and you teach the science corner. So when we get to science, now, granted, it's a Catholic school, I'm going to say he didn't know anything beyond that sentence. And I'd be shocked if he knew anything more than sometimes 7th grade girls just need to use the restroom more often. That might have been his depth on the topic. But, you know, it lays the groundwork for don't ask questions. Everything about your body is icky. Everything is gross, you know, and that's the end. And then we have women, like, I don't know how many women have come in. Now they're smart women, right? They're in elevated positions in all kinds of corporate companies. They travel the world globally pre-COVID for all of their, you know, jobs. They're, you know, they're attorneys, they're accountants, they're leading marketing ways. Like, you know, their names from being on certain companies. And they're like, huh, really? Is that how that works? God, I feel dumb. And it's like, well, you're not dumb. I mean, you're not dumb. Clearly, you are not a dumb person, but nobody ever taught you at all. And, you know, and we get into that spot where sometimes you don't know enough to even ask questions, right? You didn't even know there were questions to ask because you didn't know enough to even think more. And then if someone's like, hey, did you know when you were 14, your body was doing this and this and this. And then when it was 16, it was probably doing this and this. And they're like, oh, well, hold on. Now I got to ask all kinds. It's like, yes, now you want to know, and you're fully capable of learning. You didn't even know which page could be turned, right? Like all those women that went on birth control that still do at like age 16 because they have an erratic period. Like, of course it's erratic. It's brand new. It's the body sorting itself out. You know, are you sleeping? Are you up too late in high school? Is this, hey, talk to your mom and your aunts and your grandma. Like, is this how they all started out? Probably kind of genetic, you know, like, did you actually have a fully normal period at 12 and now you're running cross country and now it's erratic? Like, oh, now we care. Something's different. You know, what is the story? What's going on? And if it's just like, well, we can normalize this, put a pill on it, then we know nothing. You know, and I tell these women, listen, you pretty much just wore the hat of medicine cycling through your body. So you don't know what you look like. And now you're 37 and you're off the pill and you think you're having fertility problems. Is it the same problem from when you were 16? Is it not a problem, but you just don't know how your body works? Is there a problem and you need supportive care? Like, we have to now open that book, you know, 20 years later and be like, we're really back to the page when you were 16. What was happening? And some of them feel, you know, some are like over the moon excited to learn new stuff. Oh, so great. I finally figured this out. Some are really sad and I don't want to say disappointed. It's more, betrayed. They feel betrayed. You know, so pretty much people lied to me about my body, didn't even tell me there were questions I should know, told me this was the best and to go away. So I have believed all these years I was following the best piece of medical advice for me. And now that wall is crumbling. And was it the best for me? Was it not? Would I have had a choice? Should I have had a choice? What would my choices? And, you know, they start to spin because they're like, maybe I wouldn't have picked this, or maybe I would, but I would have changed it after a few years or, you know, and it's like, they just start stumbling over like, well, now what have I done? And that's, you know, I've definitely seen women go through menopause young, but not know because they were on the pill and things got kind of wonky. And then they just assumed, and they have been definitely told by some doctors over the years, it's okay to lose your period with a pill. That happens a lot. It's okay. It's just a pill. But no, it really was their body shifting into something problematic with early menopause. And when they go off the pill and now they want to have kids and they're only 32, what happened? You know, and that is super sad because it's like, if you had just been cycling, you would have picked up on some early signals. Now, if you had menopause full on at 32, there probably were some other issues, and maybe or maybe not, you would have had success with fertility, but at least you would have known what was going on. You could have either sought help earlier, or if, you know, maybe it was a very difficult situation, you just could have come to terms with it on your pace, you know, not somebody else's. So sometimes it's really sad to get to that end of the story and think, you know, I'm giving you all this information and now you're 52, but you really didn't get a chance to read your own book at your pace.
Yes, I'm enthralled with what you're saying. I thank you so much for even sharing that, because I think that so many women do need to hear that. There are so many who are on the pill and don't know. And that sadness that comes with the consequences of the lack of information and the lack of transparency about what it means to not be cycling. And that brings me really to the experience of, first, there's this really real misconception amongst women with who are on birth control that they do have periods. And it's because we don't even understand our menstrual cycles that we believe that if there's some bleeding. So, you know, even women that are coming off their hormonal birth control and they want to chart their cycles, they start describing their previous cycles, which were not cycles, they were withdrawal bleeds, right? And so their body hasn't, that brain to ovary communication has been shut down for so many years. And when we turn that back on and we allow that, or never even mess with it, what it means to be a cyclical creature, what it means to be this kind of like fluctuating, a hormonal fluctuating organism. And the fact that that's another thing that we don't really speak to, and we don't speak about how does that affect the way we work, the way we parent, the way we are in relationship and sexual relationships, intimate partnerships and friendships, our energy levels, our appetites. You know, I think it's now more and more, there's some traction with some, you know, menstrual awareness and cycle tracking apps that tell you what you're supposed to be doing. And there's this notion becoming a little more popular of like, oh, you cycle. So every week, maybe adjusting things makes sense, which I'm glad for. Any kind of awareness is like, okay, well, I'm glad we can start talking about this.
Yes.
But
It definitely is better. Sometimes it gets a little floofy out there, right?
Yes.
But even then I'm like, well, sometimes the pendulum has to swing all the way to like make space for everybody in the middle, right? There's a lot of people who are like, I am not going to the end of that pendulum swing. It's like, that's okay, because you know what it did do? It moved the normal notch a few bars more than it was, and it was too restricted before. So, you don't have to go howl at the moon or go to a drum circle. You don't have to. You certainly may if you'd like. But if you just really want to cycle and just go to work, like that's okay too. That's fine. And I will say the pill can be a good fit for some people for some time. I just love it like any other medication, that it's informed consent. It's like, okay, I know what this is. Maybe I want it short term. I know why I want it. I know I'm not really having a period. I'm just having a cyclical bleed that's, not full ovulation and shedding, but that's okay. I need this right now for X, Y, and Z. Sometimes people are on a medication and they're like, the medication is super dangerous with, birth defects. And I can't just live with myself knowing if anything happened. I also choose the pill for me. Okay. But you're aware and you're making a choice. Totally fine. Sometimes I have people who have horrible cyclical migraines and they want to do some work on fixing it, but maybe they've got like 2 more years of grad school. And like, frankly, this is not the time for me to just like figure this out. I just need them to go away and hide and let me finish my degree. And so, okay, people make lifestyle times and choices. And as long as they're doing it knowing I've been fully informed, I know the pros, I know the cons, I know what's a fit for me, I want it or I don't, and here's why, I feel great about that. Even if sometimes I'm like, ooh, I don't really agree with this medication, but if they are informed, then hands off by me, you know what you're doing and you're choosing it for your body. And so I fully support that. But when it's I didn't know it was happening, I didn't know what was going on. That's where, we kind of fall into these little pits. And I will say one funny thing that I thought recently made me very happy. I was at one of my daughter's soccer games and she's newly 13. And so it was an indoor game still in the winter. One of the girls caught an elbow or something in the face and they had some gushing bloody nose. So I get a text from the coach across like, hey, can you come on down and help us out with this? And so I'm like, sure. So I go down there and, the girls were huddling over this one girl and the game had continued. And so I was just expecting to walk into like this super gusher. And I was like, oh man, I bought ice water on the way down. I grabbed paper towels from like the front desk. And I was just thinking like, from their actions, I was like, this is going to be just a mess. And I get over there and she stands up and there's no blood anywhere. And they have taped a maxi pad to her face. I was like, and they were like, we figured this was the best thing. And I was like, girls, it's genius. And of course it was just so funny. And she was like, I have to walk out like this. Like, what are you guys doing to me? But they're like, it absorbs blood. What's the difference if it's coming out of your nose? Right. And so they're kind of teasing her, like it lightened up the injury. And so she was okay. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, like my generation would not have done that because we would have died for anybody to know that we even had them in our bag. Even if we all secretly had them in our bag, you tucked it under socks. You didn't let the flap stick out. Like it was so secret. And so just the fact that they were like, I have an extra one if we need it. I was like, that is actually the most wonderful opening of the door for future conversation. Like it seemed silly and it was funny, but I was like, oh, this is so refreshing. And they're like, well, it's only girls down here. And I was thinking, and then the dad showed up and they're like, he's fine too. He only has daughters. So like, what does he know? Nothing but this. And I was thinking, again, we would not have let like someone's dad, we would have been like, oh my God, hide the things. Right. Yeah. So I was like, all right, that's actually, if this is silly and open and not a big deal, these girls are going to be far more open to conversations. And even if they don't necessarily like want to hear it from their mom, right? It's going to be not that big of a deal to ask a question. Then I will definitely say I get better questions from women in their 20s, very sincere. Why is this happening? Should I do something else? Is this weird? Than I do from women in their 40s and 50s. Those women are still like, well, I have a little, women's issue, but it's fine. What is a women's issue? Right? Like, yeah, you got a problem with your ear. I mean, that you're a woman, so is it a female ear issue? Like, well, I just had a problem down there. It's like, are we talking yeast infections? Are we talking cancer? Are we talking like, What? Well, just, I just had to have something with the lady bits, but it's fine. You're like, is this relevant for our visit? Because if it is, I'm going to need words, terms, a diagnosis, but they're trying not to offend me. They're embarrassed. And so, it's nice when the 20-year-olds are like, okay, well, I have this one thing, and then I had this test, and they told me this, and, and I'm not going to say they chat that much with their girlfriends, but they feel comfortable bringing it into an office, which is such a huge step.
Huge step. So refreshing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. And so important. I mean, just having that kind of communication with a doctor, with a professional, being able to actually know the body parts you're talking about. And then that is a younger generation, right? That's very encouraging. And yet, like you just said, at the same time, there are women who are going into menopause now, in menopause or in perimenopause, that are not comfortable having these conversations. But we're in a place where there's so much more access, and there are women health professionals like yourself and practitioners and specialists that can really, it's easier to talk about, because you're not necessarily going to the traditional male OBGYN, or it's something, women are out there, people are out there as activists, as educators, and yet there is this huge percentage of women that are aging and dealing with urinary issues, pelvic organ, prolapse, painful intercourse later on, and they're not comfortable talking about it, and they're not getting the support that they need. And they're also so unaware that a lot of their challenges can be tended to, can be healed, can be helped.
I mean, really, that's the saddest part, is that there's so much that could come. So many of them could be treated with full resolution, but suffer in silence, because this is, they were just raised in that sort of like, these are not things that are discussed. And so then, they just don't. And I know I've had women in their 50s tell me about their urinary incontinence because they had kids. And it's like, okay, that might have kicked it off, but like, have you been to see a pelvic floor PT, or have you? Well, no. I mean, my doctor told me right away, you had babies. I don't know what you expect. And, close the door, done deal. That was it. And it's like, so you used to be a runner, but you've not run in 30 years, even though you loved it, because of this. But you also so we have, sometimes it's like we have women doing maybe Pilates, but, gentle flow type classes, not because they love them, because some are doing it because they love it. We have some doing it because it's all that's left that they can do without peeing on themselves. And it's like, these women have tossed away the act of life that they particularly liked, not knowing someone could help me and it wouldn't be embarrassing and it would be fine to ask. And if they couldn't help me, they would refer me to a better person who could, and this could be addressed, but they don't get that message. And like we were saying earlier, women don't even know that our cycles and our end of cycles we're really just on this long transitional course. Like menarche is the first day you got your period. There's 10,000 medical forms that want to know that answer. How old were you when you started your period? But it didn't, even though to us it was very shocking on that day, like, oh, it's today, what just happened? Your body was prepping for that for 2, 3, 4 years, and on a planned thing. If you were born, with a uterus and ovaries, guess what? Eventually the hormones were going to push in this direction and try to cycle. It was just lined up from the genetic get-go. And so here's what's happening. And ta-da, whether you 11, 12, 13, there was a long story leading up to that. And then all that time through teens and 20s and 30s, there's ebbings and flowings of hormone fluctuation. And it's not just like, and then you hit the normal middle spot. Oh, and then you went over the end and there was menopause, and that is the end. Again, things are always on this like sliding, fluctuating scale. And so when we have, people through perimenopause, sometimes you'll see listed as 9 to 15 years. When women read that, they really think it's the TV version of hot flashes and, gaining weight and all this other stuff. And like, obviously their life is over. And for some of those people, it's like, you've probably been perimenopausal for 7 years. And in that time you had a baby and you were breastfeeding but things were shifting. They were already shifting. You weren't as fertile as you were 15 years earlier, but you didn't know because you didn't test. So the benchmarks that you think are benchmarks are maybe not benchmarks. And instead, it's just this little wave moving along. And it really, for some people, never bothers them. It's not that they didn't have symptoms. It's not that they didn't notice changes. It's just that the changes didn't bother them. They were either ready for them, they were sort of expecting them. Yes, my cycles are getting a little shorter. Yes, sometimes they're a little lighter, or they're definitely heavier. I'm noticing a difference than when I was 30, but they're not bothered. And so those people are the ones that get through menopause, which menopause is defined as a full 12 months with no cycle and et cetera. They make it all the way there, and they'll say like, oh, menopause wasn't so bad. I didn't really experience anything. It's necessarily not true, other than it was within the realm of comfortable norm for them. Right. And then we have other people who are expecting every 28 days, I will have a cycle. And if I don't, I'm obviously broken. And this is a mess. Or they skip a period and then they don't know what's going on, or, and everything is a problem because now, people will come in, I think I'm in menopause. When was your last cycle? Last month. Okay, well, probably not menopause within 28 days later. They're like, no, but I had, and they'll describe some erraticness. And it's like, okay, sure, you're probably moving that way, but like, that could be a 5-year ride. That could be a 10-year ride. That is not like we're measuring for tomorrow, because this is the end. And I know we were speaking earlier also that cultures that view aging in a positive light, you're wiser, you're elder, you're revered within the family, you're revered within society. Women in those areas show fewer reports of bad symptoms of menopause than they do in very youthful centered societies. The US is very youthfully centered. And so menopause here is like the worst thing that could ever happen to you because you're almost dead. Why even go out? No one's even interested in talking to you. And it just gets into this negative light. That is true if people aren't feeling great, or they're like, I am feeling like I'm putting on weight, and it definitely can happen. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're piggies at the table, which I detest when people describe themselves that way, but it's amazing how many women will say it. Your hormones are shifting and your body is doing a different thing, and your body is serving you differently. And if you did just spend your whole life fighting off 5 pounds and now you have 10, yeah, that's not super fun, but why is it happening? Right. And we know that our adipose tissue, our fat tissue, especially around our hips and our lower abdomen, helps to produce more hormones. We change that fat tissue into hormones. So as the ovaries and the uterus are decreasing what they can offer hormonally, our fat tissue is actually helping to sort of balance that out until our brain and tissues are like, oh, okay, the old levels we were trying to match, that's not what we're going for anymore. We're going to go for a new norm that's here. Oh, wait, we're going to shift a little bit more. This is where we're going. And it, again, it takes some time. It's not that people are suffering, it's that they're changing.
Yes, I thank you. And I'd love to speak to that because we go through this change that we're not really ready for or told about. And I think that also happens to mothers, for example, right after birth. And there's this huge like dip in hormones so quickly. And you're also having a new baby and your body's all sore and you feel so different, but there's this huge hormonal transition and your body's just trying to recalibrate. And then it happens again. And it happens again during that transition as your body's figuring out, okay, how do I do this with lower levels of hormones? How do I adapt? And sometimes when you go through a change, like I think about, I've moved so many times. I'm like a gypsy with houses. And there's always that, there's that period of settling in, figuring out, reorienting with my space. And it takes a toll on me physically, because even if it's something that I'm really excited about, your body's like adjusting to a new environment. And so my energy levels might be different. My concentration might be impacted. And that kind of inner change that we go through, if we are, I think it's about expectations. Like we expect not to change. We're kind of comparing ourselves to, well, I expect to be feel like energetic and kind of consistent all the time. We do live in a culture that values that consistency is key, you know, day in and day out. And shifting into, well, some days I'm really geared up to do this, and other days I need to take it a little slower. I know it's going to change again, and I'm going to be able to perform this way. And giving ourselves that leeway and supporting ourselves in that as well. And then deciding also, do I need support? I know I speak to a lot of women who want to understand hormone replacement therapy, because this is a very controversial topic, and it depends on which generation you're speaking to, right? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, you know, testing is always first in cases like that, right? So I harp a lot, especially when I teach to, you know, younger colleagues or newer students, test, not guess, test, not guess. And, you know, it's one thing to say like, we all need more water and veggies. I can sort of say that and just know I'm right, you know, that'll help us all. But when it comes to like what's really going on with somebody, I do like, so there's a lot of women that are in perimenopause that really just need to take better care of themselves. They really do just need to get more sleep. They've been running themselves into the ground now for 40 years. They've been chasing kids. They've had pregnancies. They've been working moms, you know, and I don't know how, I mean, I can't even count how many women I've seen in their mid 40s who have just bottomed out, right? They have just crashed and they're so upset because they're like, I was the one who could, you know, burn the candle at both ends. I could stay up all night. I could type on the computer and make dinner for my kids and change a diaper, you know, and they're like, and now I can't, and I'm struggling. And part of it is like, because that was abnormal. To demand that of you was insane. And the fact that you pulled it off for as long as you did was like really award winning, and you deserve many medals. Unfortunately, there's many women doing the same thing. So it's like the grand Olympics of mothering, working, and everything else. So there's that. On the other hand, the fact that you can't keep it up forever, like that's pretty darn normal. Why would you be expected to do that and feel good forever? Right? So sometimes we have people that really crash and burn, and they do need support. They do need testing. We do need hormone testing. Sometimes we'll do adrenal testing just to get a bigger picture of what's going on. Like, how deep is this burnout? Is this also perimenopause or menopause? Like, how deep is this going? And I love testing like that, because a lot of women today, even very educated women within good medical practices, are either told flat out or hinted at it's kind of all in their head. You know, it's like, we're really only a few shades away from still diagnosing people with hysteria and, you know, some other uterine female thing. You know, and we read about it like, oh, back in the day. And it's like, we sort of still tell women the same thing. We just use different words, but we still kind of give them a nod of like, well, you are getting older. That is Ted. I don't know how many women hear that every freaking day in those offices. Well, not as young as we used to be. You know, you're getting older, things like that. And, you know, it's upsetting on numerous levels. One, that is not informative. She's aware of her age and she knows that time ticks. So yeah, we're actually older now than when you and I started our conversation a half an hour ago. We have aged, you know, it's like, that's just a known fact. Let's move on to something that is more helpful. To tell someone that they're just getting older is like, there's no hope for you. You shall now progressively always feel worse and nobody can save you. You know, it's very dead ending. And it's kind of shaming. So I don't like any of that. Whereas a lot of times when we test women and they come back with, you know, something abnormal, and then you can educate on it, they're like, okay, so I'm not crazy. And you're like, no, this will make you feel different. Having an abnormal estrogen level will affect you. You know, we have over 400 sites in our body that serve as estrogen receptors, muscle tissues, brain tissue, liver tissue, like not just the uterus. So if it's off, you're going to feel off in a lot of different ways. Just not thinking the same. You were more fatigued. You were a little bit anxious, you know, something that you're like, I'm not feeling like myself. How could it just be this one hormone? It's like, because this one hormone is wheeling and dealing all over the place. And that's when you can really get in with people and say, listen, because of the range that you're in, you can work on this yourself. There are some supplements that are helpful. You aren't sleeping. You aren't eating well. You aren't treating yourself. You know, let's stabilize that and then see how you feel. I don't expect the hormone to go back into the quote unquote norm because we're in this menopausal window. But if you start feeling good every day, then we don't care. You are continuing to age normally and you feel comfortable and things are okay. Or sometimes the numbers are so off base or the person really is struggling, really, truly struggling. I do like to refer them to other colleagues that do bioidentical hormone replacement, because it can really help. It can be wonderful. Then again, but, big but, really careful about the providers that I refer to, because yes, there are people all over the nation that will sell you whatever you want, and no one's measuring and take more. And that is not helping. And people do not feel better. If not, they feel worse. And if they don't feel better, they start to believe I can't be fixed. Not that someone's not helping me. It turns into this horribleness that I'm experiencing. This is my life. I've been told I'm aging. They tried to fix me. Can't be done. Right? Whereas someone that's really good at what they do, they will test, they will treat, they will retest, they will titrate. And sometimes it takes a whole year to kind of dial in what this patient needs to feel their best. And then again, our bodies are shifting, and this is a very normal time for shifting. So they're being retested again in 3 to 6 months, changing doses again. It's very normal for patients to come in and say, well, I was taking this, but now I'm on this. Oops, I'm up on this again. How are you feeling? Hey, most of the time, pretty good. Right? And it's like, great. Someone is dialing and steering for you. And I also like the docs that I trust, because they will also kick out the patients that are begging for something. And they're like, listen, you eat McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you don't sleep at night. Come back when you're healthy, and we'll see if you actually have hormone problems. They're pretty sharp about, now you go home and take care of yourself and do your homework. And then we'll see if you actually feel bad because of your hormones, or if you feel bad because you're treating your body like garbage. Like,
yeah, that makes sense.
And I like the ones that are more direct. I can easily educate patients and then say, listen, you're going to get a straight dose of something, but that's what you want. You don't want to circle doctors' offices all over the city of Chicago and have someone talk nice to you, but you don't feel better. You want information. And so if it's direct and a little harsh, but it's a done deal, saves you time and money. So, it's easy to soften the blow from the get-go, because I do have a few that are very direct. It's like, and now we all know where you stand, and now you can help yourself feel better. Like, that's it. You're on your way. You will now start to feel better based on what's next. So I do love that. So there is a time and a place, just like anything else. And that is my love of functional medicine, is that it is not, we're just going to wave feathers over you and hope you can vibe higher. It's like, we have a lot of awesome Western medicine that can really bring you where you need to be, but we can also fully help you say, listen, you need more exercise, or you need less exercise, or you need different exercise, or, that diet you found online is trashing you. You need better health, but this is not it. Or maybe you don't need 40 gallons of celery juice every day, and, things like that. So,
yeah, I think that is also my love for the functional approach, where it's, you're taking everything into consideration, and it isn't just relying on, oh, this is something that's a medicine that'll help you, but also what are you drinking and eating, and how are you moving, and how are you feeling? I mean, about life and what's going on, because if anything, our hormones are such a reflection of everything, every choice that we make. I mean, I even tell people the relationships that you're in are going to impact your hormones. And yes, the choices that you make about food or what time you go to sleep. I mean, all of that, what you put your energy into, it's going to impact your hormones. And ultimately, one of the things that I think about often is just, there's this expectation sometimes, people who want to maybe go a natural route, or are afraid of medication, or they recovered from the whole hormonal birth control storm, and they're like, no, I don't want any more hormones because those wrecked me and I worked so hard. But we also live in a society where some modern women, mothers in the prime of their business, their adrenals are taxed. They're inevitably, even environmentally, their adrenals are exhausted. So they might not be at the place with their hormones where they're feeling great, and a little bit of support might really help them feel better. And, there's that kind of like, how do we now walk people into, it's not an all or nothing. It has so much to do with, like you're saying, information, consent, really understanding, versus just like throwing everything out.
Well, and I think sometimes it's giving people a timeline. If you do all the things I'm recommending for you today, I expect you to start feeling better in like 3 months. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of apparent work with no kickback. And then in about 3 months, you're going to start saying, oh my gosh, I can think better and I can sleep better. And like, okay. And so there has to be a lot of buy-in if it's something that far out, right? Like 3 months is a lot of time to do a lot of work and just hope things are going your way. At the same time, it's important to say, listen, if you don't do anything, like you listen to all my ideas today and you take down all the information I'm giving you, and then you just aren't ready, what are the repercussions truly? You know, it might be nothing. You're going to stay the way you feel now. And if you just sort of need to come around with some readiness, okay. You know, some people are not worsening rapidly. And so it's like, you are where you are. Not doing anything is not going, this is not going to go away. You're not going to improve. You will stay how you feel. But if you aren't ready to do more, expect that. Expect this sameness that you're in. And hey, if you want to call me in 7 months because you're in a better place that you really want to start working on stuff, okay, no big deal. Or, hey, listen, this is progressively worsening, you know, and I need to tell you, if you don't do something, if it's not with me, with somebody else, things will get worse. Here's what's next. You know, and then I think the timeline is always important too, because otherwise it looks, and it sounds salesy and people don't want, you know, you hate to walk in someplace that's like, ooh, you caught me just in time. This deal is closing, you know, or whatever it is. You know, and I've had people say, okay, I paid for all this testing and I have all this great information, but like, I just can't. And I will tell you, easily when I was younger, I would be so frustrated. Like, are you kidding me? They just spent $2,000 in tests, which is not small. And we just spent, you know, a couple different visits going on how to best tackle this. And they're just not going to do it. You know, now, obviously it's like no skin off my back. So like, what am I upset about? But it would just be mind boggling to me. I would want them to fix it. We have answers. Let's go. Toss in some, you know, more years of my own growth, my own having 4 kids, my own, like, I can't do all the things at the same time. You know, and you get into a better place of like really understanding patient readiness and really understanding that if you're not in a place to make a change, you can't, like, you just, it's not that you're not interested. It's not that you're not excited about it. You just aren't there. And so really to offer those patients a little space of like, listen, it's a lot to digest. You're ready? Start tomorrow. You're not ready? We'll start when you're ready. Like, I am not going to chase you down at home and make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, unless that's what you are thriving on, right? And if you want to come back in 8 months and talk again, I am not at all going to be raising my eyebrows at you like, and what have we been doing for 8 months? You know, it's like, okay, so where are you now? You know, and let's pick up where we left off. Are you feeling the same? Okay, then let's get going. Has something changed? Let's reassess. You know, and really trying to tap in that women are so overburdened with so much. You know, we talk about the mental load and the default parent. The pandemic, I think, just, you know, quadrupled all of that. And just trying to, you know, talk to somebody about like, now I want you to buy all organic and steam. I mean, it's like, whoa, time out. Like, we already just lost half of the people that are like, I'm out. I can't do one more thing. And so really trying to dial it into like, what do you need? How can I help you? I want you to know all the things, but then I want you to help me find your starting spot, right? Like, I want you to understand all the choices you have on the table. And if you're ready to take them all on, let's do it. If you're like, okay, I can't do any of that except maybe drink more water, it's like, that's great. But at least you know what the choices are. When you're ready to go faster, you can. When you need help, you know how to ask for it. You know what will help you if you can do it on your own. And you know, if you can't, that's okay. And there's people out here that this is what they serve to do, is help people over these tricky spots. You know, and if you're balancing graduate school and aging parents and young kids and the job, but you also are feeling like dirt, it's like, then you need to reach out. You know, you need a healthy community that is okay with you saying, listen, I know we said I was going to drink more water and that was 5 weeks ago and I have not. I'm still there. And you're like, that's all right. That still has to happen. So, you know, and I think, you know, the more that, and I found more of these as well. I go through, you know, social media every once in a while and I dump out anything that gives me a visceral response. I have to dump it out. You know, this one makes me angry. This person drives me crazy. This topic always lights my hair on fire. You know, just, you got to go. But that purging over time has actually really led me to some really amazing women's pages and different companies and different things. And it's like, man, if we could tap more younger women into sites like this, that this is where they get their feedback. People having real days, people trying real things, people sometimes failing, and either this is how I got through it, or somebody helped me, I have not figured my way out of this hole, I think is just such a gift we can give across all of these things. And then we stop expecting others to show up as their very best selves. And once we stop doing that, then we release ourselves from always having, the quote unquote perfect self or whatever it is. We allow all that. I'm showing up today, not feeling so great. I feel kind of bloated, and that's how I'm showing up today. You don't have to share it with everybody, but you can definitely to yourself be like, yeah, you know what? It was 100. I'm giving my 110% just like showing up today. I'm not comfortable, I'm not in a great mood, and I'm going to do the best I can. Even just telling yourself that is just, it's friendly to yourself. I'm going to eat this chocolate today because I want it, and it's going to be amazing and delicious. Probably have my period coming. All right, I'm going to eat it, and I'm not going to go home and weigh myself or anything. I'm just going to notice like, oh yeah, I do like this on certain days, and move on.
Yes.
Right? So.
Oh my gosh, yes. I hear that as an emotional eater that I am, for sure. Noticing like, I'm going to eat this and then I'm not going to punish myself after, because that's another thing. And I have started doing that. I talk to myself like, if I'm going to eat this, it's because this is what I'm going to do right now. This feels good to me. And that's it. And then again, I'm not going to do the whole withholding or feeling crappy after. And I will say it like, you are not going to do that, Laura, because that is.
I always think it's like, it's actually, and I know people that have not been raised in that society, which I know most of us probably were, maybe won't connect with it. But since so many of us were, it is so hugely rebellious to just decide what you want and then do it. Even if it's just food, right? And be like, you know what? I don't want that cake because really I don't like cake. Okay. But I do like scones, and I'll eat the whole thing because that thing is so good that that's what I want. And it's not going to be this or that, whatever else. I'm going to eat salads because I love salads. I do love good vegetables, and I love how they make me feel. But, if I think back to, especially my 20s, we were measuring, and, even if we weren't measuring by cup, we were visually measuring and counting and this, and, and following rules that actually were based on nothing other than what we thought were things. And so then sometimes just to sit and eat. And I always laugh when somebody who's like, well, you follow a lot of nutrition and you know a lot of this. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, do you eat dessert? I'm like, if I want to, yes. I'm like, okay. But well, how much dessert is bad for you? I'm like, well, obviously, if we just lived on desserts, we'd be omitting protein and vegetables and nutrients. So sure, those are too much. But if I'm going out to dinner and I'm going to enjoy a meal and we don't go out very often, and there's a dessert I want, I'm going to eat it. Okay. And then what you do? Like, and then I drink my coffee. And I know what they're digging for, but I'm kind of like, I'm not giving it to you because you're supposed to enjoy those things. Those are okay to enjoy. I follow a lot of different cultural websites and their foods, which I love seeing because I love food. But also, like, again, it's sad to hear how many of these women have been told the only food that's good for you is, of course, the boneless, skinless chicken breast, the blanched or, softly boiled broccoli. I mean, there's like a recipe that is like the meal of whatever. And it's like, okay, well, so you ate that for dinner tonight. Great. Like, now what? We can't just keep eating that. But no, that's the advice, right? And regardless of what people's like ethnic background is, they're told, well, that's too high in fat, that's too high in carbs, and that has too many sugars, and the portions are too large, and that's just unknown to me. So obviously it's terrible. It goes on and on and on. And then we look at all these foods across the world, and you're like, you would just say no to all that because you think you should. I mean, think of how much amazingness you've avoided if you follow what you think the rules are, right? So to hand women back, ask about your body. How does it feel? When you're eating, let's say you're eating at your aunt's house and it's your favorite ethnic meal, but you don't feel well. Okay, let's dive into that one. Like, if that's not making you comfortable, then maybe that's the one that needs a little tweaking, but not because, it's whatever your nationality is, simply because your body is not liking some ingredient in there. Okay, so we could change that and leave the rest of it alone. You don't have to omit it because it's not on like the page of, gently grilled chicken or whatever, like the George Foreman thing that, totally fried things into, or pressed it until it had like no flavor, no juice whatsoever. So trying to hand people that, and again, like just for women to choose for themselves. I'm going to choose the medication I want, or I'm going to choose against it. I'm going to choose the type of doctor I want to see or not. I'm going to eat that thing or not, because that's what I want, because it's how I feel best. That is a missing loop. It's because I should. I'm doing it because I should. It's like, you should because you've had testing and this is really the best for your body. And they're like, no, but I just should. It's like, and I don't know how much people enjoy me in my office getting into it, but I feel like I'm constantly like, all right, no. If we do a lab test and you have an allergy, then you're right, you shouldn't. If you shouldn't, because great Aunt Susie once upon a time said you shouldn't because you won't fit in your prom dress. Well, like, we're done with that. We're over that. Would you like to eat it or not? No, I don't like it. Then don't eat it. Oh, I love it. Have some. And so, and it kind of goes into how we choose our medical care. How many women are still seeing the doctor that their mother saw, especially OB-GYNs? There's a lot of women that see the OB-GYN that everyone in the family sees. Do you like this person? Do you feel listened to? Oh God, I hate going. Can you go somewhere else? I mean, sometimes people are limited by region or by insurance, but like, if you can go somewhere else, pick someone for you. Sometimes the doctor is talking to the mother still, and the daughter's like 32. It's like, this isn't even legal, just so you know, like they can see everybody and, attend to their patients, but some don't. And they're like, oh, I told my doctor I wasn't ready for kids, but, he and my mom have been talking about how I'm so ready. It's like, get out. Like, no. And so for women to choose, this is the doctor I'm going to see. This is the kind of feedback I want to give. This is the sort of care I need. I like direct. I like soft and fuzzy. I like fast appointments. I like to hang out for the day. Like, it's okay to shop around for your best fit, because that's how you best care for you. Right. And you can do that. You can take best care of you, and you can deny things that you're like, no, that's not working for me.
That's right. You can do what's best for you. And I love that you are so passionate about women choosing for themselves. That's everything. I think ultimately it's not about coming to you and say, Dr. Gina, will you fix me? It's more like, can you help me understand how I can feel better? Can you tell me, like, give me the information so that I can choose for myself what feels right? And I can figure that out even to start. What does feel right? How do I even gauge that? And then what are my options? And that's everything. That's what we're missing. I mean, really, if all young women from the get-go had that experience of, let me understand my body, let me understand my options. I mean, it would be a different world.
It would be a totally different world, because how we're educated now really falls into all the things. What we should do, because someone else said, please fall in line. Please don't ask questions. Please don't waste our time with your complexity. And I know, like, even one of our sex ed things, which again, I went to a Catholic school, so the in-house lesson was very brief, but then we did go to an educational center, which was horribly embarrassing and had naked people all over the walls, which, as a fifth or sixth, whatever we were just like dying. But they were great educators. Like, they actually did a very good job. They used it, anatomical terms. They were very casual. Like, if you had a question to ask, you could have asked it there. I'm not saying we did, but they definitely were far more open to all ranges of education. But I still remember that we spent a lot more time on the women's body because it was so complex. And then, like, guys have a penis. And so, like, okay, let's move on. And it was just, and so I think at the time, because we'd already been put into this shell of like, you guys are so embarrassing and so gross, and like, oh my God, spending all that excess time in the female room was just more like, oh my God. And so I think if that's kind of broken open early of like, this is how bodies work, bodies do lots of different things, yeah, bodies can be weird and gross, but like, that's okay. Sometimes toes are gross and, whatever. And, and just sort of like really sort of softening a lot of that and leaving open lines for questions. You're right. I think it would change, how we choose our college courses, how we choose our friends, what we choose to say yes to for activities or no, or why we attend certain parties or not. I mean, I just think of how many things I did, even like college, high school, college, where it was like, I'm not comfortable. I don't want to be here, but like, I should be, and then finally kind of as an adult being like, I'm not coming. And then later being like, so great. I'm out for a jog in my neighborhood. I'm going to go home and have a cup of coffee, and I'm not doing that thing. Oh, I saw you out running. Aren't you going to a meeting? I am not. Why? Because I don't want to. So, there's not one person there that's life is going to change by me attending that meeting, but mine will change by me not attending that meeting. I am not attending the meeting. You know, and I laugh with a few friends because sometimes like stuff will come up we really need volunteers for. And it's been, you know, again, it's a certain little zone that you're in when you're like, yeah. This is not a paid position, but if somebody would reorganize the library, and you're like, oh, no. So, yeah. And I will totally help out the woman that chooses to volunteer with her adrenal support by the end, because she's going to feel overtaxed. She's going to be resentful. She's going to be tired.
Yeah.
She's not happy. So yeah, so you're right. I mean, I do think opening the doors for questions early, teaching women about their bodies, teaching women they can ask questions about their bodies, that their bodies belong here. You know, the bodies serve many, many purposes, and that they can choose the purpose that they want it to serve. You know, there's just so much that goes in that direction that everything would shift. How we address things would shift. How, you know, even work style practices would shift.
Yeah. And I think our comfort level with saying no to things would be amazing if that is just fostered earlier on. Like, no, because it's not good for me, because it's not what I want to do, because it doesn't feel right. Like giving value to the way that our body feels and functions. Like, oh, you know, this doesn't feel good for a reason. And
really getting to like teach people that reading your gut feeling is a totally valuable tool. You know, if you're saying yes to something and then you're like all upset about it, it's like, that's because the answer was supposed to be no, and either go back and fix it or just know it for the next time. But the next time you get that feeling like you don't, you know, it's fun, I think, when people issue a proper no and then nobody even asks questions because it was just delivered with such finality that it's like, oh, all right. Yeah, I guess that was the end. And you're like, yes, it was. You know, and I also get sometimes, again, like with my daughter's friends, they're like, well, I just don't want to go. And I won't be rude, but I'm just not going. And I think, oh, God love you. You don't feel the pressure to go because Mrs. So-and-so said, otherwise it would hurt so-and-so's feel. Like, you just moved on all past that and decided, no, it's like, that is going to serve you well. Hang on to that, right?
Yes. That is some beautiful power to see in our younger women, in our daughters. And absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And I could keep talking to you for a very long time. I love everything that you've shared, and our time has come to an end. And I know you've got your kids and your home, and I want to let you get back to that. But thank you so much. Your approach felt so just direct and refreshing. And I think what you said about your younger self, and then, you know, having that like real wanting this to make it happen, and then just realizing where you are now after children and after living. And I have felt that so much too. Even now, when I want to work with other practitioners, I often feel drawn to, if it's going to be a woman that's a mother. Like I there's this, because I am a mother, because of that certain kind of life experience, I feel like there's this richness, and there's this level of compassion and level of just realness that comes with that experience in so many ways. And it's just such a pleasure to meet you, Gina. I'm so glad.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. This is so fun. So I love listening to you and Christina when you guys both talk together and host things. So this was really fun. And thank you both for inviting me. I loved it. I still want to hop into Christina's kitchen and eat all her food.
Oh yeah. She's all about the flavor. So you would love her, because it's all the flavor.
I make a lot of her recipes, and they are crowd favorites. And so every time she's like, I'm moving, I'm like, well, I'll just need that address, because eventually you're going to find me in your kitchen, and don't be too weirded out. I'm just there to eat.
Yes. That's what I look forward to when I'm in the same house as her, which I just was in Miami. It's like, oh, Christina's going to be there. I get to eat her food. Yay.
Oh yeah. I mean, the smells have to be amazing.
It is. Everyone knows when she's cooking, but It was wonderful. And I want to let all the readers know that all of Dr. Gina Sirchio-Lotus's contacts are going to be underneath the podcast, and they will be posted and shared so everyone will know where to find her brilliant self. So have a wonderful rest of your evening, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you
You
so
too.
much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.